Hello and welcome to That's So Craven, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back and it's a disappointing one today. We're going to be discussing the game against West Ham. Unfortunately, Fulham going down 3-2, architects of our own defeat. A disappointing day out and our first loss in London this season and in 10, 11 games. So a really disappointing night overall. Here to talk it all through, we have Dave at Crave. How are we going, Dave?
Yeah, I'm okay, thanks. Yeah, I've got over it. It was an interesting night, wasn't it? A very disappointing night. It was my first experience to London Stadium, and yeah, we didn't get the result we needed, and we should have got. So yeah, I'm still kind of getting over that. Still a little bit bewildered at how the match kind of unfolded, and glad that we're able to have this cathartic experience today and make some sense of it. And then we can just move on, can't we? We can just leave it where it needs to be left and move on with our lives and move on to Leicester.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say there. It is, it was weird, and that's the general consensus that I see online this morning after the game. A lot of people just saying that was one of the weirdest games of football I've sat through. This Fulham team, we've seen this Fulham team make mistakes in the past, but not so many mistakes in one single game.
Mm.
Which all lead to goals and completely cost us. And it's interesting. I think I put it in our That's So Craven group chat this morning. This Fulham team haven't made a huge number of mistakes this season. Yes, we've dropped points and we've been a little bit sloppy, but in terms of, real howlers, we haven't been bad for that this season. But in the last 3 or 4 games, we must have made 3 or 4 very big errors that have led to goals and have dropped us pretty vital points against opposition that we should actually be picking up points. I'm thinking back to Bassey's failed clearances, the 2 errors against West Ham here. These are real simple things that we're just letting slide at the moment. And as someone else said on socials this morning, this is the difference between mid-table and Europe. And at the moment, we're
Yeah.
not a European side if you make errors like that. Um, Dave, I mean, it's been a great season so far, but as I saw this morning, we've only won 7 games.
Mm.
Do you think we're weirdly stagnating at the moment?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I still think we're playing well at times. We played well for the most part last night. I think we played that game 10 times. West Ham win one of those games. It's just those moments, those mistakes are costing us. That's a question back to you, Jack. I think. Do you think it's just poor individual errors, or is it something to do with the way we play? Why are we making these mistakes so regularly that's costing us points?
I saw a lot of people complaining about us playing out of the back, but at the same time, I think we've done it very well for the majority of the season.
Mm,
So why? Yes, fine. You do make errors when you try and play out of the back. It happens. We've exploited other teams who have made errors, and we've scored goals off the back of that and got results because of that. It's obviously the way that Marco wants to play. It's a way that actually works because if you get it right, you see how well we can break when we do play out of the back and we are able to unleash Robinson down the wing, for example. And we create a lot of chances from playing out of the back. I wonder if it's just one of those things you have to accept as part and parcel of that style of football is you will occasionally make mistakes because
mm,
teams will press you hard. And when they press hard, they do force errors. I think the issue for this West Ham game is we had 2 errors in the one game and sandwiching just a lapse in concentration. And I think we were sort of shell shocked off the back of Andreas's very poor error. And we can talk about it in a bit more depth as to who was at fault because I saw some people trying to blame Leno, some people blaming AP. But look, we had 3 really sloppy goals conceded. Unfortunately, they were all in one game. West Ham scored 3 goals from 3 shots on target,
I know.
and we've paid for it.
Yeah, we have, and It was such a shame because, obviously we started the game really well. I think the lineup was more or less what everyone expected, going into the game. I don't think there was too many surprises there. And we started so well. I thought the first 30 minutes we were, showing so much intent to get forward, to try and, create chances, score goals. We obviously hit the bar with Harry Wilson from a really good move, actually. As it was kind of clipped in, I think, from Robinson to Iwobi, wasn't it? He'd made a run into the box,
Yeah.
and he got the ball across. And I don't know. I feel that Wilson maybe should have done a little bit better. Kind of stuck a foot at it, and it comes back off the bar. And you're thinking, oh, this is a good start to the game. We're playing well. West Ham don't look at it. They've obviously got injury issues, which is going to, I think any team would have struggled in that situation, the amount of injuries they had. And you're thinking, oh, this looks like a real opportunity to pick up another away win. And then, it's just as I think it's Anis Boson's just mentioned in the comments. And that's where it can be quite interesting, this first goal, Jack, because I think we have got slightly different views on it. But my first impression was that, why are you giving it to Andreas in that area? I mean, he's got 3 players around him, and he's running to kind of backwards, so he's facing the goal. And I just think it was maybe a bit of an unnecessary pass, put AP under a bit of pressure. Now, I don't want to excuse the pass that he played, but it was kind of a blind over the shoulder pass. There's no getting away from that. But I do think that maybe Leno put him in a bit of a difficult position. I mean, what's your take?
I'd love to be the podcast that has done all the work and pulled all the other clips of the times we've played out of the back in the exact same fashion. But let's be honest, we're not that podcast. But I've seen that move over and over again where AP does hit that ball blindly. And I think I've seen Lukic and Berger do it as well, seen Smith Rowe do it, Iwobi do it, where the ball gets played in and they play that ball, ping it out wide to Castagna on the right or Robinson on the left, bombing on. And that is how we break out of that press. Yes, maybe it's a bit tight for Leno. And I think a lot of this is hindsight going, Leno should have just hammered it out of play. Yeah, but he wasn't actually overly pressured. Andreas was running towards Leno as an option for a pass. So Andreas wanted the ball.
Yes.
He should know better there, really, at the end of the day. It's a mistake. It's not, I don't think it's a howler. It's just a plain mistake. It's a misplaced pass and just kind of dumb football. Like, rule 1, don't play across your box. It's really simple stuff. And we've cooked it. And I think you have to attribute blame 50-50 here. It's not Leno's fault. Andreas showed for the ball. Andreas mishit the pass. He obviously tried to get a lot more on it and didn't actually clear it as far as he wanted to. It's not a bad finish, but it's not a great finish. I don't think Soler purposefully means to place it perfectly in what is quite a small gap to get past Leno as he's running back across the goal. And look, it's their first shot on target and they score a goal. It's a mistake. But my issue is what happens like 2 minutes later. And Dave, it's happened multiple times this season where we switch off. It's usually in that little period after half time or at the very end of the game. But it does seem to happen quite regularly where we concede a goal and everything just turns to jelly for the next 5 minutes or so. And we really struggle when a team is on the up. Do you think that's a bit of an issue that needs to be addressed in the long term?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that was a huge issue last season. I thought we were starting to come out of that a little bit where, a team would, especially away from home, we'd concede and then instantly concede again straight after. It happened so many times last season. And there was clearly a mental issue there that we really struggled when the game swung. To see that happen yesterday was really disappointing. And I just think it's so avoidable. I just think you just got to be a bit smarter. So we saw West Ham at the end of the game when we were chasing a goal, waste time, during the period and when we were on the attack. So they'd go down with an injury in the box or, they'd, various kind of gamesmanship tactics to try and, halt our momentum. And that's just what you need to do. I just think we're a bit naive, and we start panicking. And that's the problem. And it's really disappointing to see that creep back in, because as I said, I thought we would it hasn't happened in a while. And I thought we were just starting to kind of break away from that. But there's clearly a problem there. And I just wish we were just a little bit more street smart and could, when another team's got their tails up, that we were just able to take the sting out of the game. And even if that means, going down with a knock or anything to just break that momentum, I just think I see other teams do it to us, and I find it frustrating that we don't kind of replicate that.
Yeah, it's the classic buzzword of game management or game IQ, and we really do seem to lack that at times. And
Mm.
I'll pose a question: is that on the manager, or do you think it's on the squad and the players themselves
I
to
think it's got to
actually
be.
be aware during the game?
Yeah, look, I think it's got to be a mixture of both, really. I think Marco, he's obviously must be aware of this issue, that because as I said, it happened so many times last season. And he must, I do think you'd expect him to be telling the guys, look, when another team scored and they're clearly got their tails up, we've got a bit of momentum, we need to find ways of, getting the grip back on the game. Okay. So I do think that the instruction needs to be there, but also the players on the pitch, instead of panicking, they need to also be street smart too, and find ways in which to kind of break that, momentum. I mean, I actually thought, having watched the highlights back, that it's a decent counter attack from West Ham. I don't want to
It is.
completely say that the people were saying that Anderson, poor header from Anderson, and then sloppy defending, but I'll give a little bit of credit to West Ham. I think they're pretty clinical once the kind of header from Anderson kind of dropped through to Kudus. From there, I think they got the ball out wide. They found the guy putting a pretty decent ball to the back post, and Souček got in front, into a bit of space in the box. It was all kind of quite well worked. So I'll give them a bit of credit for that. It was the one move in the game I thought they actually put together. But yeah, it's just, as I said, I think it felt like it was coming at that point. And if we'd have just found a way to, break play up and slow things down, I don't think it would have happened. So that's the disappointment.
Let's wind it back a little bit and look at the actual lineup itself, because I think a lot of the issues that came out of the game potentially link back to the team that Marco put out. We obviously did away with 5 at the back. Diop was I think, actually very unlucky one to miss out. And then obviously Berger not quite fully fit yet, so we went with Lukic with AP in the 8 and Smith Rowe in the 10. Smith Rowe and Pereira, it just isn't working at the moment, is it?
No, I mean, it's not really worked all season, if we're honest. I think Andreas has struggled to adapt to that role as a number 8. I don't think he helps us defensively, and that's not that's not really his skill set. So I kind of have to think Marco's got to take a little bit of the blame for that, for persisting with that, because it leaves Lukic very exposed in there. It's no wonder that he's almost on 10 bookings this season, because he's having to do a lot of the defensive work on his own and break up play on his own. And I think that, long term, I think everyone would like to see a bit more of Berger and Lukic play together. And for various suspensions and injuries, that's not been possible for any period of time so far. But I do think that you're right. I think it would give us a lot more strength in defensive midfield to get a better hold of the game. And I don't think we'd lose too much from an attacking sense either, because I think both of those players can interchange and take their time, take it in terms of, contributing further forward. It feels like it could have the makings of a good partnership there, but we just haven't seen it enough. And I've kind of been banging the drum all season that I think we're missing a proper number 8. We're missing someone who can do a bit of everything, legs to get up and down the pitch, that can break up play a bit, but also can, contribute a little bit in the final third. And appreciate that's quite a wide skill set, but I think it's quite obvious that that's an area of weakness for us. And I think then you mentioned Smith Rowe further forward, and yeah, look, Smith Rowe. I'm going to say he was terrible. He wasn't kind of giving the ball away or anything, but as far as I could see, from watching the game live, but I think the frustration is just for the money that we paid, he's not impacting the game enough in that final third. And I think what compounds that is when you see a 17, 18-year-old kid come off the bench and immediately start to impact the game in and around the box, it puts more spotlight on Smith Rowe and what's he been doing for the previous kind of 80 minutes. So you're right. I think that we've got a bit of an issue with balance in the middle of the park when we've got either Lukic or Berger out. And I think that in that attacking midfield role for Smith Rowe, I think he's really struggling to kind of impact the game at the moment. I don't know, Jack, how you feel about this, but all of his best appearances for Arsenal seem to come off the left. I'm worried that, have we put him out of position? Are we playing him out of position? A bit like AP. Is Smith Rowe being kind of used out of position? Should we be using him a bit more off the left where, maybe he'd have more of an impact? I don't know.
It's a good call, I think. The issue that we have at the moment is we've got a number of players who can play in a number of positions, but none of them have like a strongest position, if you will. Like Smith Rowe is he's good in the 10 if he's got the right people around him. I'd love to see him playing in the 10 with Berger and Lukic behind him, because I think that would add a different dynamic there. You could put him out on the left, but Iwobi has been sensational from the left so far this season. So then you'd be shoehorning Iwobi into a different position. Pereira plays well when he's in the 10, but not in the 8. Lukic and Berger, I think they're pretty comfortable sort of rotating through the 6 and the 8 between them. Harry Wilson, I mean, he's been great in the 10 as well, but he's also been played out on the right and sort of drifting inwards. So we're in this weird position where I feel like Marco doesn't know how to use these attacking players in the right combination. We've got a lot of talent there, and we've got a lot of form there as well. When you look at Iwobi and Wilson in scintillating form, Lukic is having probably his best season, easily his best season for Fulham so far. Berger looked great when he was coming on. Pereira has had flashes. Smith Rowe, there was a little period where when Fulham were at their best, Smith Rowe was actually playing incredibly well. We're obviously missing Reece Nelson, who's on track to come back a little bit sooner than we maybe expected as well. So that adds another complication. Adama had a great start to the season. Like there's a lot of quality there and there's a lot of ability. It's just how we put it all together, because it's clear that Lukic and Pereira don't play well together when they're the 6 and the 8 paired up. Smith Rowe and Pereira don't seem to play well together when they're the 10 and the 8 paired up. Kearney seems to play well at times, but it depends on who's next to him and who's in front of him. It's very confusing, and I don't know what the answer is.
I
think there's a bit of chopping and changing required.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think a couple of things, I'd want to mention on that, and one is I think I do think there's been a bit of an overreaction, on social media to last night, because I think genuinely that's a game we should have won and played well enough to win from an attacking perspective. And a lot of players are getting kind of thrown under the bus this morning. And there was individual errors last night, and there was, Smith Rowe was quieter than we'd all like him to be. But, I still think that, we could have easily won that game 2-3-1 and everyone would be saying fantastic performance. And, these questions wouldn't necessarily be being asked. So there's a little bit of perspective, I think, on that. But the second point, I think, is sometimes the players, and it goes basically to what you were just talking about there, is that we're also quite quick to jump as a fan base. And I'm very guilty of this myself. There's quite quick to jump on a player for how they're performing, when sometimes it's actually, the system they're not best suited to that role in the system. And I think, Andreas is a big part of that. I've been very critical of Andreas this year. But I actually don't, having really thought about it, over the last few weeks in particular, particularly since his attitude's kind of improved, and I can see that he's got a desire to do well. I just don't think the system helps him. I don't think that number 8 role is getting the best out of him at all. And you can't contribute that all to Andreas Pereira. Part of that is Marco's persistence in playing him there. And we all love Marco Silva, and I'm not here to, I don't want to jump all over him and and criticize, but I think you have to point that out. You have to say that we've seen this all season, Andreas in that role, and not really produce the performances that we all wanted from him. It's quite clear that it's a role that he's struggling with, and when he's played further forward, he's played pretty well. So you have to point the finger there and say, well, if we either don't have the players, in which case we should be using this transfer window to try and address that, or we need to try and mix things up a little bit, as you've just said, to try and get the right players in the right roles so that we get the best out of everyone.
Well, that was, covering off on Pereira. I guess we've sort of briefly touched on it, but I've had a lot of people ask us to discuss Smith Rowe in a little bit more detail, and I'm more than happy to dig into this one, because I think we've potentially got some differing views here as well. I agree it's a big price tag, and so in that sense, he's definitely underperforming so far. But I think we've seen enough from him to show that there's some quality there, and I use Lukic as an example. I think I've seen some other people use the same example, where Lukic last season, I was pretty ready to write him off and thinking in the summer he's gone because he's not showing enough. He doesn't look like he's up to the pace of the game. He doesn't look like he's fitting into Marco's system. And then he rocks up this season and has been superb and undroppable. And steps in as we're missing Polina, and all of a sudden Lukic is here playing almost like an upgraded Polina, and we're like, geez, where's this bloke come from? And I feel like we need to give Smith Rowe time. And I think Sam said it actually on a podcast a little while ago, that he does need a bit of time just to settle. And Marco said it in his pre-match press conference. He said Smith Rowe was playing really, really well, copped a knock against Arsenal, and hasn't quite been the same since, and hasn't got himself back up to full fitness. And that little period where he was playing well, we were winning games and pulling off some pretty great results as well. And, like we said, Smith Rowe is not quite performing. He comes on against Ipswich and is involved in both goals. He does have that ability to show these moments of magic. I think we're getting frustrated because we're not seeing it every single game. And I think we might have unrealistic expectations, because he is a signing who we maybe wouldn't have always been able to pick up. He's a real marquee signing. He's an England international, a young English player with a very bright future. And maybe we're being a little bit too hypercritical of his performances so far because of that. I'd like to get your thoughts, because I think you're maybe a little bit further along the line than I am.
Well, I think the point you make about write a Fulham player off at your peril is really true. It's not just Sasa Lukic who you mentioned, but I think we'd all written off Harry Wilson. I mean, you only have to go back to a couple of months. He was about 5th choice. And everyone was thinking maybe we should move him on in January. And now he's, starting, and you just wouldn't take him out of the team at the moment. So, there's been lots of redemption stories from the Fulham squad. Raul Jimenez is another, I could go on. So, yeah, look, there's plenty of time for Smith Rowe to turn it round. I think the price tag weighs heavy on him. And I just think that we've got a pretty good squad. We've got a pretty good squad. There's some good players on that bench ready to come on and turn the game. So I think everyone's under a little bit of pressure in that starting lineup to perform. So when you have Smith Rowe, who's kind of shown moments of quality, particularly early in the season, and where he was kind of scoring goals and assisting quite early on, which was a great start to his kind of Fulham career. But I think that, last couple of months, there's been games where he's really been quiet, and you just not kind of impacted the game enough. And you just look to the side, and you look at that bench, and you think, well, we've got options there that we could bring on that would probably impact the game more. As I was saying before, you looked at King last night, came on and took his opportunity. You've got Adama there who started the season really well, and we know that we can move people around the front. So I think everyone's looking at him, and when he's quiet, thinking, what's the point? We've got good players on the bench that we could put in, you know, are going to make more impact. So I really do understand the frustration of the fan base. But I also think, you know, if we give him time, you know, a bit like Lukic, bit like, you know, the other players that we just mentioned, I'm sure it'll turn it around. But for the immediate moment, I think at this moment, I think that we've got to use that squad. And if there's players that are going to impact the game more positively, then I think Marco should explore that in the short term. And when Smith Rowe earns his opportunity and earns his place back, like Harry Wilson's done this season, you know, maybe we see a different player.
I think that's fair as well. Frustration is a good word to describe it. It's a key word because I actually also feel like some of the other poor performances and the errors that we've made over the entire season where we've dropped points, potentially ESR ends up being a bit of a scapegoat
Mm,
for other poor performances within the team where, you know, Pereira doesn't play that well, or you know, Bassi or Anderson has a poor game and we lose because we concede a sloppy goal. But the focus then shifts to, well, ESR wasn't creating enough for us to score goals to win that game.
yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, I feel like we are looking for a scapegoat, and the obvious one is the bloke with a 30 million price tag over his head.
Mm,
And I feel like in that sense, it feels a little unfair to constantly lump in on him and not give him the time that we've given to other players who are now loved. You know, I saw someone else talking and saying, you go as far back as when Robinson was first signed for Fulham, and people are going, how on earth could he start over Joe Bryan? Why would you drop Joe Bryan for Anthony Robinson?
mm,
And you have to remember that players do take time to settle in, and I feel like I want to give him more time, but I agree there has to be a limit at some point. I don't think I'm at the end of my tether yet. I see a lot of people on uh, Twitter and social media who are definitely at the end of their tether with ESR, but I think patience is required. There's a long way to go this season still. We've got a cup run.
yeah,
We've got 17 games still left in the league, and
mm,
there is genuine European aspirations still. We're only 5 points off European spots. Like, we can throw our arms up and go, this game was terrible, but it's not like we're sliding down the table. I shared a screenshot earlier of the history of our league positions this season, and we've only dropped below 12th once, and that was on the first game of the season.
yeah.
We've consistently been, you know, either bang on mid-table or actually sitting in the top half. So I think we need to all take a big breath, a big step back, maybe cuddle your friend and feel slightly better. And, you know, yes, we're not winning every single game, but things are not that bad. We've only lost 5 games this season. It's still a great season so far, and we're still there's a lot of positives to take. One of those positives, great segue, is Josh King, and you sort of mentioned it before. How impressive has he been? I know we're only seeing very small tidbits of him at the moment, and I would have loved to have seen him got more than the sort of 10 minutes or so that he got against West Ham. But geez, his feet are incredibly quick, and his game IQ seems to be there.
Yeah, it does. I mean, he's so exciting. He's got, as you say, really, really quick feet. He looks super confident, and fearless is actually a word I would describe him as. You know, he's got no fear of mixing it up, getting involved, and try to make things happen. He is knocking on that door. He must be knocking on that door, because when we're seeing these little flashes, he is creating chances. He's, you know, stretching defenses. He's making himself a nuisance, and I don't think it's going to be long before we see Marco give him an opportunity. Yeah, really impressed again when he came on last night, and really we've missed an opportunity that he's created for us in the moments to take a point out of the game. So yeah, I think it does lend itself to the ESR debate, because they do play the same position. And one of the players is in a bit of a quiet, is not really on top of his game, is a little bit quiet from time to time. And then we've got this fearless kid off the bench who's coming on and making things happen. And at some point, that's going to break. Something's going to change. It's either going to be ESR is going to pick up his game, or Josh King's going to get an opportunity in that role. So I'd advocate doing that sooner rather than later. Personally, I'd love to see him get an opportunity against Leicester. And I think that's maybe where you'd probably advocate, keeping ESR in, giving him more opportunities. But I'd just like to see that, little bit of youthful enthusiasm to try and help unlock the Leicester defence on Saturday. But yeah, look, not just him though, Jack. There's another player I want to highlight from yesterday because and all season really he's been excellent, and I think you'll very quickly realise what I'm talking about. Alex Iwobi, I thought was the best player on the pitch last night, personally.
Yeah.
It was not even just obviously the goals are kind of odd goals, two crosses like that have been chipped into the box that have found their way in, but just his general all-round player, just for everything good that we did last night came through Iwobi. I think he created that chance for Wilson that hit the bar before West Ham scored. He created the chance for Rao that when that hit the bar right after they scored their second goal. He was just always involved in the link-up play. He is just so fun to watch. He's just great on the ball. He just rarely gives it away. The crosses into the box are fantastic. They're always, in a danger area. And that's why I give him credit for those 2 goals last night, even though they weren't intentional, because he's put it into a really dangerous area, a great way. And it's given the goalkeeper a nightmare because he doesn't know whether the striker's going to attack the ball or not. I was just so impressed with him. I was really disappointed when he came off. And because I just thought everything, as I said, everything that was good about what we were doing was coming through him. And to see him now with 7 goals and 3 assists after 21 games is a fantastic return. And I just think we're really getting the best out of him. So it's not all doom and gloom after last night. He was a real kind of shining light for me, him and King.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's what you get coached as a winger when you're looking at putting in crosses from that kind of area. It's basically have it sort of aiming for the far post, swinging and giving the keeper something to think about, where the keeper has to, and look, also on top of that, I know Jimenez and Wilson didn't get touches on the ball, but if they're not making those runs and getting into those areas, Fabianski gobbles up both of those crosses comfortably. Because they're making those runs and making a nuisance of themselves and getting into the right areas, and Iwobi's crosses are pinpoint, that ball ends up in the back of the net twice. And it's literally a carbon copy. He hits it from the exact same spot. Yeah. It's just laid to him comfortably by Robinson, who picks up two more assists. And they're probably the least impressive assists that he's had all season, but he got 2 more on the books, which takes him, I think, keeps him rather in third. He's only just behind Saka and Salah for assists this season, which is just insane. But yeah, I agree. Robinson was the person who the Premier League gave as the official man of the match, but I think Iwobi was superb throughout. I think Robinson actually got caught up a little bit, and I said it during the game. Kudus and Wan-Bissaka were actually dealing with him very well. Kudus could keep up with him in terms of speed, and Wan-Bissaka just seemed to be picking off the passes that Iwobi and Smith Rowe were trying to play through to him. So I think Robinson had an okay game, but Iwobi was just next level, and he has been all season. He is, for me, so far our player of the season, I'd say. And the fact that he's popping up with so many goals on top of assists and just his general creative play, because I'm sure if you roll it back, for all of Robinson's 9 assists he's got this season, or I think it's 9.
Yes.
I'd say Iwobi has probably laid on 7 or 8 of those to Robinson hitting the byline. So it was a great performance from Iwobi, and I think he is probably our number 1 undroppable player, along with Bernd Leno, who unfortunately made this one was definitely his error for the 3rd goal. And it came out of nowhere, which was really surprising. It wasn't like when he first received the ball. It was Paqueta. Was it Paqueta who was closing him?
It was the Ings that closed him down.
Was it Danny Ings? I can't remember.
Pretty sure it was Ings.
Danny Ings, yeah. And he doesn't like sprint at Leno as soon as Leno gets the ball. He's not chasing it hard. Leno sort of gets the ball at feet, takes quite a comfortable touch, and Danny Ings sort of just jogs across to him. Leno takes a touch out wide, but doesn't quite get it out of his feet enough to be able to then put his foot through the ball. And Ings is somehow quick enough to get in there and nip the ball away from him. And again, it's another open goal for West Ham to put the ball into the back of the net. And look, you don't come back from two mistakes like that in a game. You just, I said at half time, I feel like this game's already gone. We score the first goal with Iwobi, and you think maybe we're back in it. And then you see that happen. You just go, no, it's not our day today. And despite pulling one back, it just wasn't our day.
Do you know what? I find that really interesting because at half time, I didn't think we were out of it, even though we were 2-0 down. I thought we were, for the first 30 minutes, as I said, I thought we were by far the better team controlling the game. We had a little 5 minutes of, where we shit the bed, for want of a better expression. And I just felt that, that's always a dangerous scoreline, 2-0 at half time. And I thought, if we can come out the blocks and get a goal, we're bang in this. Which is exactly what happened. In fact, we were it's the flip of what normally happens to us, where we actually started the half really well for once, and got a goal, albeit as we've discussed, a bit of a strange goal, but a goal nonetheless that got us right back into the game. And from there, I just thought, well, we've got a great opportunity here. If we just can keep this intensity up, West Ham won't be able to keep us out. So it was so disappointing. You've got that moment from Leno where he's just switched off, isn't he? It's so out of character, where he just hasn't really appreciated how close the player is to him that's closing him down, and he's taken far too long dwindling on the ball. And obviously he's been tackled, and it's just led to such a tap-in, a tap-in goal, where West Ham completely against the run of play at the time, and it just puts us back to 2 goals deficit. So and even then, I still thought, if we just keep attacking, I think there's more goals in this for us. But it was a mountain to climb at that stage. There's nothing you can say about that. It was just a moment of madness from Leno. He's got plenty of money in the bank. He's been great. Recently, and he's just had a wobble. And it's unfortunately cost us yesterday, I think. Again, I think, the reaction to it was really good, and we managed to get back in the game. But, it just proved to be, the deficit was too much to close in the remaining time. Oh, just on that as well, Jack. Sorry, just before, I just wanted to finish that with, I also felt that the subs were a little bit late yesterday. And I appreciate Muniz might have been carrying a knock, but it just felt like we maybe waited a bit too long.
I was going to ask you the exact same question, because I genuinely was screaming for Muniz and Josh King. I think I said at halftime, there is a comment on X somewhere of me saying that, can we please get Muniz and Josh King on at halftime, because I just feel like we needed that energy injection that they bring. It's that sort of excitement factor. Not to say that anyone was having a notably poor game, but we just needed an injection. And I was shocked that we can be 3-1 down and have only made 2 changes in the 58th minute or whatever it was. And Iwobi scored in the 78th minute, but it was, approaching the 80th minute, and we hadn't got Muniz and King ready to come on at that point. And I just think when you've got these players on your bench, you have to use them earlier than that. If you're 3-1 down and chasing a game, why as soon as that third goal went in, I think it should have been right changes, straight on with Muniz. Interesting as well. What are your thoughts on this two up front business with Muniz and Jimenez? Is Jimenez playing up front, or does he go out wide? I think I sent a message to the group saying, it's time to play a game of guess the formation, because we had all sorts of players on the pitch, and I had no idea what was going on. I saw Josh King on the left wing at one point. Jimenez seemed to be playing centre mid, like playing in the 8. It was mayhem.
Yeah, it was a bit chaotic. I think against Ipswich, when we had Muniz and Jimenez on the pitch, they started actually together, and then Jimenez pushed out to the left. Yesterday he kind of went deeper, didn't he? He kind of went into the 10, I think. But
I saw him picking up the ball from Anderson at one point. I think like inside our own half. I thought, who's that? Oh, it's Jimenez is all the way back here picking up the ball. It's very strange.
Yeah, it was the last two games it has created some chaos. I'm kind of all for it at the moment. It just kind of it creates a bit of chaos, and it allows us to put a bit more pressure on teams, and have a bit more of a goal threat, I suppose, on the pitch. Having both of them on the pitch at the same time. But I just think, as you said, it was late. It was late. It was late subs. I thought Kearney and Traore, were quite late. I was surprised there wasn't a change at half time, considering we were 2-0 down, and even later to get King and Muniz on, as you've said. So yeah, it's I don't think that helped proceedings. I don't think if we'd have mixed things up a little bit earlier, we might have been able to kind of create an opportunity through that chaos. But yeah, just a little too late for me.
And to wrap up the game, Josh King, great work down the wing, puts a ball into the box. Lukic can't quite get his foot to it. I think I'd probably call it good defending. I don't know how Josh King managed to get to the byline there. His feet were too quick for even the cameras to pick up at that point. Lukic, yeah, like I said, stretches for the ball. Adama at the back post. There are bodies in the way, to be fair, but he's got to do better there. There's a big area of goal for him to strike out, and he puts it over the bar. And I think he did the same against Man City in a similar position, where he's just tried to go for pure power rather than placement, and it's sort of a lack of a cool head, which I think we see from Adama fairly often when he gets into those striking positions. It's a real shame he doesn't put that away, because I think we'd possibly be having a slightly different conversation if we'd managed to come back from a game with that many errors and pull a draw out of our ass. But disappointing way to end the game with a miss like that, don't you think?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, a bit of a moment of magic from King when he cut back and laid the ball across. I think Lukic probably should do better. I think he probably should score. And when it goes to Adama at the back post, he's about 3 yards out and he's completely skied it. So it's not a very composed finish, is it? So yeah, really disappointing. It's Adama in front of goal. We all know that the end product, is particularly goal scoring is not there, and it's just another proof of that, I guess. Yesterday, so really disappointing way. And actually, just before that, we'd had a really good chance as well, where Roby broke through the middle, and he laid it off to Rao, who was coming into the box, and it wasn't the best finish, but I wish Iwobi had shot. I thought he had enough space to take the shot on himself.
Yeah, I thought he was driving towards goal, and I thought, you've already scored 2. Surely you have the confidence to keep going and take a shot from distance, and anything could happen at that point. There was also a point slightly before that where Harry Wilson broke forward and had the opportunity to put a ball out wide, and it just didn't quite come off. And it, for me personally, it just felt like one of those games where you're watching it and you go, "Oh, it's just not our day today."
No, it
And
wasn't, and there was a lot of poor finishes.
It just never turned around.
Yeah, there was a lot of poor finishes throughout the game. There was a lot of times where we had the opportunity to shoot and skied it, or I know that Harry Wilson cut inside in the first half and ballooned it. I think there was an opportunity for Robinson
Jimenez
right at the end of the half.
Rosette as well.
Yeah. Jimenez Rosette. Opportunity for Robinson right at the end of the first half, where he put it wide. We just had the shooting wasn't there. I think we the 21 shots, 11 were off target last night. That doesn't sound great,
Way more than 11. I'll pull up the stats now, as seeing as you've mentioned it, and I'll delve into how terrible it was. Fulham with 21 shots on goal, just the 5 on target, and considering of those 5 on target, 2 of them were definitely crosses that Iwobi put in. It's pretty poor. Unfortunately, West Ham 4 shots on goal, 3 on target, 3 goals scored. Fulham dominating possession, 56% to 44, 515 passes to West Ham's 415, 3 corners to no corners for West Ham, which just proves how they just didn't get up our end of the pitch, apart from to put the ball in the back of the net. And Fulham with 18 fouls, which I was kind of surprised by when I saw that, because I thought West Ham were probably the dirtier side on the night. But I know Lukic got pulled up for at least 6 fouls, just him, for the game. I know Robinson gave away a handful as well. So I thought, West Ham had potentially more than 9, or should have had more than 9. 3 yellow cards apiece for both the sides. Look, disappointing, but let's look forward to the Leicester game. Dave, we'll just do a bit of a mini preview here because obviously with the midweek game, we don't have the time to try and knock out 2 podcasts. But Leicester going into this game, I put it into the Discord this morning, a screenshot of Leicester's last 5 results: loss, 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 loss. Do you feel like you know what's coming on the weekend?
Well, look, all I'm going to say is we're more than capable of going to Leicester and winning that game. We are good enough to do that. We've got the players to do it. We've got better players than them. We're a better side, and we're capable of going there and winning. And we should be going there with the expectation of winning that game. That's what I'll say about it. Whether that happens or not, it's a different story. They've got players that could cause us different issues. If they play Vardy, then we'll have that issue of pacing behind, and we know that Anderson struggled with that of late. So there are going to be potential some battles like that to look out for. But I think if we can line up with the right side and perform to have that, even if we perform like we did last night and cut out the errors, we win that game. We'll win that game on Saturday. We can cut out the errors and play like we did yesterday. 3 points for sure on Saturday. So that's the way I look at it.
Oh, geez. How's the jinxing of it? I mean, the one benefit, I guess, Leicester play tonight. So we have 1 day extra in terms of our preparation for this game. Obviously, that game hasn't been played yet, but looking at the table, Leicester, 20 games played, they've conceded 44 goals. Only Wolves have conceded more this season with 45. They've only scored 23 from 20. Compare that to Fulham with 32. So we're obviously, when you look at the stats, it should say that Leicester will concede a handful of goals in this game, and really all we need to do is be tight enough at the back, which is seeming to be a bit of a problem for us at the moment. We need to be tight enough at the back to stop them from scoring, full stop. But ideally, keep them to 1 goal. I feel like with this Leicester team's defence, which looks very, very leaky this season, we should be able to score 2. They're missing Ndidi, who's not going to be able to play. Vestergaard is in training at the moment, but it's probably a late fitness test. He'll probably be with the squad, but not quite there. They're missing Pereira, who had a pretty serious thigh injury, so he's not expected to be back. So Odson Edouard as well. Mads Hermansen as a groin injury. So there are some injuries there that are going to be affecting this Leicester lineup. It's just about how Fulham actually bounce back from what was a really disappointing result. And it's something that I think we've struggled to do a little bit. It takes us quite a long time to recover from results like this. And on top of that, I feel like if we were facing Man United next, we'd probably end up putting together a really good performance against them. I'm fractionally worried that playing against Leicester, we're just not going to quite get ourselves up for it, and Leicester will just be fighting that little bit more, seeing as they're still sitting quite deep in that relegation zone and in a relegation fight. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I take on board everything that you're saying. And you'd think that a team down there would have the fight to try and, especially being at home, to try and get a result. But as I say, I do think we've got too much for them, and if we can just cut out the mistakes, then I can't see any reason why we can't win this game. So I take on board as well that we're coming off the back of a loss and there might be some heads down, but it's an opportunity to freshen things up too. That's going to be the interesting one, how we line up on Saturday, because there's a lot of people calling for some changes, and you can look across the park and point at, potential changes. It's not just in the front lines. There'll be questions around, should Diop get the nod, who's done very little wrong to lose his place in the 11, and potentially might be a little bit better suited for this game, having a physical presence in there. Worried little that Vardy might get in behind Anderson. That's certainly something that I suspect the fans will be thinking about. I'm not sure about Marco, but I think the fans will. Other than that,
I'll pose you the question, Dave. What changes would you make for this game?
What changes would I make? So I'd be tempted to make that change, Diop for Anderson, just because I think that Diop's physicality in this game And just that concern I've got about Anderson getting caught in behind, I think, and he's not quite in the good moment. He's not quite in his best form. So I'd be tempted to make that change. Of course, if we had Kenny Tete fit, I'd have him straight back in. But of course, that's not the case. He's out till April, which is really, really disappointing, because I just don't think Castagne's looked as strong. And it might just be taking him a while to get up to the level, because he's not played a lot. But we look like we're missing Kenny a bit, particularly attacking sense, I think. But yeah, other than Diop, I think I'd keep the defence and Leno in goal, of course. Midfield-wise, I mean, we're all praying Berger's back, but the fact that he wasn't even on the bench on last night suggests to me that if he is in the squad for Saturday, he's likely to be just off the bench. And I'd take that just to see him, just to know that he's coming, But I'd be surprised to see him start. So we are going to have to think about how we approach the team in, how we approach the game from a midfield sense. I tend to agree with Skibby on this, that I think I'd put Tom Cairney in there. A game like this where we should have a lot of the ball, I think it would be a good game for Tom to come in alongside Sasa. And then further forwards, I think this is where I might disagree. I'd love to see King get a chance. I really would. I'd just love to see him get an opportunity. And there's plenty of competition there. Smith Rowe. Some will suggest that we should stick with him and wait for his form to turn. I think that Andres Pereira has performed better in the 10 and is a more senior player, and of course our set piece taker. So there's a strong argument that he should move forward, and I accept that. But I think there's just a part of me that would love to see that wild card Josh King get an opportunity against a team down the bottom of the table to see what he can do. On the wings, I'd keep it the same. And up front, there's an interesting one. I don't think Raul had a bad game yesterday. And of course, he hit the bar of a header. If Muniz isn't 100% fit, then 100% I'd keep Raul in. I do like the competition Muniz is providing Raul, and vice versa. So, if there was a fully fit Muniz, I wouldn't be against him starting. But I suspect because of the injury, it will still be Raul.
Yeah, I think the injury is probably the only thing for me keeping Muniz out of the side at the moment. I think Raul's last 3 goals have all been penalties. And so, yes, he is our top goal scorer at the moment. But, I mean, Muniz's finish against Watford, I know it's against Watford and it's a cup game, but that finish was top class. Just superb. And I just feel like we're missing. It's what we want from a player like Smith Rowe, is those moments of magic that change the game. And I feel like we see that with Muniz. We see him hitting bicycle kicks, and he's going for those moments. And his physicality as well. I know Jimenez is probably a little bit quicker and maybe makes slightly better runs sometimes, but Muniz's harrying of defences, I think, is a valuable asset that we're not seeing enough of from Jimenez at the moment. So I'd love to see Muniz come in if he's fully fit. I think that's the change that we should make. I like the idea of a Lukic, Cairney, King combo through the middle. I don't think it's going to happen realistically. I'd love to see something along those lines, but I reckon it could be. I reckon we could see Lukic, King, and then Smith Rowe. I was impressed by King's defensive ability when he was playing in the 8. He made some really good tackles and actually gets his body in and around the ball quite regularly. So I'd actually, potentially stick with him and give him a bit of faith in doing that more physical role in the 8. So I'd like to see Lukic, King, and then I'd probably put Pereira in at the 10. I know he made the mistake, but I love the fact that he owned up to it on Instagram. I know people are all over the place with their commentary on all of this, and I just think, fair play to him to actually come out and say, yeah, my mistake. We didn't see Bernd Leno do that. I don't think he has to do it, but it does take balls a bit when you see a fan base kicking off and you actually put your hand up and say, yep, I made a mistake there, but we'll bounce back from it. I'd be backing AP after that, put him in the 10. I think you're right. Stick with Iwobi and Wilson on the wings. And then, through the defence, it's an interesting one. Do you bring Diop back in, who was really good over the last couple of months, or do you stick with Anderson, who's obviously the sort of marquee defender? I'd be sticking with Anderson, I think, for this game, but he's going to have to buck his ideas up. I think his ability on the ball, playing the ball forward, is something that we would massively miss, and teams would actually press us even harder if we didn't have Anderson there. And so I think having Anderson just gives us an extra out, and we'll potentially use it a little bit more often. And obviously stick with Leno in goal, because I don't think he's getting dropped even after a mistake like that. Dave, a prediction for the Leicester game?
Yeah, I mean,
Give us a
there is
score.
this. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously you've given us good reason to think that this could be a tough challenge, and it does have a bit of Sheffield United away last season vibes, which was we struggled to get a 3-3 draw there, but I'm confident. I think that, as I say, I wouldn't expect us to make the same calamities mistakes that we did yesterday. I mean, that's. As I say that, I'm not sure I fully believe it, but I wouldn't expect that exactly to happen again. I think that we've got enough to cause them problems. And I think if we score early, there'll only be one winner. I'm going to go for a very confident 3-0 to Fulham.
Love that. 3-0 to Fulham. That's a big result for us.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a 2-0 to Fulham, I think. I think they're going to give us a fairly tough game. We'll probably go 1-0 up and hold on till late when we'll score on the break, probably with one of our substitutes, whoever that may be. I'd love for us to see Josh King score his first goal for Fulham soon as well. I feel like he's already got a lot of confidence, and you see that when he plays, but I'd just love to see him get on the score sheet. And he's a midfielder, so it's not like a duck on his back like a striker has, but I just think that would give him such a massive confidence boost in his development to get on the score sheet and score his first goal for Fulham. So I think it might be the day for it on the weekend. I don't think he's going to start, but off the bench, Josh King, first goal for Fulham. Dave, I think we can probably wrap it up there. Before we do, though, I will just mention that I was on the Fulhamish podcast earlier in the week covering the Women's FA Cup game. So, jump on, give that one a listen. It's a really good episode covering not just the FA Cup game itself, but the women's season in general, and also, I guess, a bit of a general chat about the future of Fulham Women's and where we would like to see that going. So definitely check out Fulhamish for that episode, and we'll continue to be covering the Fulham Women's as they kick their season back off after their winter break. So do keep an eye out for that over the coming weeks. Dave, thanks very much for this cathartic experience, being able to talk through your disappointing first visit to London Stadium. Are you going to be going back next season, or do you think that's that for you?
No, I think I'd go back to London Stadium. As I said, the atmosphere is not great, but the stadium's quite impressive. I think if you get there early, you can get something to eat and you can get into the ground through the security. I think if you leave it late, you're going to have a problem. You're going to be queuing. But I quite enjoyed it. The experience of the stadium. It's just a shame the result didn't go our way. But it's one of those nights, I think, where we made errors and we couldn't put away our chances, so sounds like the story of our season, doesn't it? So I will be going back, but I think now I'm happy to put that one in the past, and it is what it is. It's happened, it's gone. I'm ready to move on now that we've picked the bones out of it. And as I say, I do think that if Fulham turn up on Saturday, that will lift our spirits with another 3 points, and it's about time we got there. Another win on the board. 7 seems a bit disappointing, really, when you look at how we've played this season to only have 7 wins. So, I think it's time to get the number 8.
Yeah, back to winning ways, I think would be. Let's lock that in as the podcast title for our Leicester review on Sunday or Monday, just to put that out into the universe and get that one on the card. So, I agree. I think we need to return to winning ways. Because it does feel like we've been stuck on 7 wins, and we talk about all these draws and dropping points. We need to turn it around a little bit at the moment, because it is fairly congested in the table. There's a bunch of big sides below us who will surely pick up their form as the season progresses, in Spurs and Man United, So it is important for us to pick up wins, especially against teams like Leicester this weekend. So, Dave, thank you very much for joining today to talk this one through. Really enjoyable chat, mate.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you to everyone who's joined in on the live stream. A big shout out to everyone who's chucked comments in. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you get your podcasts. These podcasts are always recorded live as well and available to watch live on YouTube. Yeah, you can also catch up after the episode. Please do jump in and join our Discord as well. You'll find all the links on our social media. A really great place to chat all things Fulham. We really appreciate all the support in there and how that continues to grow. You'll also be able to follow the games live on the weekends as well. So please do jump in and join. Thank you again. And as always, come on, you Whites.